continues to function effectively. While the markets closed today because of the situation in Manhattan, the United States financial system has continued to operate. Banks have been open all day. The Federal Reserve has operated regularly and continuously. The Department of Health and Human Services has mobilized medical personnel and supplies to provide help to local authorities who are working so diligently to respond and try to help the victims of these terrible attacks. President Bush has committed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to identify and bring to swift justice those responsible for these despicable attacks. The Department of Justice is setting up a hotline for families who fear that their relatives may have been victims of one of these attacks, and we will be announcing that telephone number shortly. Our fellow citizens and our freedom came under attack today, and no one should doubt America's resolve. President Bush and all our country's leaders thank the many Americans who are helping with rescue and relief efforts. We ask our fellow Americans for your prayers for the victims, for their families, for the rescue workers, and for our country. Thank you all very much, and we will continue to update you as information is available and confirmed.
When will the president return to the White House?
Will he go to be back in Washington, Karen? Will he address the nation? If Vice President can stand...
Presidential Counselor Karen Hughes in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of the FBI talking to reporters, and very unusual, she did not take questions, which normally would be the case for someone speaking in a spokesperson's capacity. But what we heard from Ms. Hughes is that all appropriate precautions are being taken. She said the president is in a secure location, the vice president, and is in continuous contact, she said, with Vice President Cheney. She mentioned again that Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld is at the Pentagon. Secretary of State Powell, she said, at an undisclosed location. She said she went through, ticked off a list of measures that have been taken to assure that the federal government of this country continues to operate. She said a plan was put in place after the first attack on the World Trade Center this morning, and she said it has been in operation ever since. In an effort to be reassuring, she said on high alert, the United States forces were put on high alert. American embassies abroad, the same thing. She said not just the president and the vice president, but also when you think about the succession to the presidency, the Speaker of the House would be third in line after, or second in line after the vice president. She said the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, has also been put in a safe, or taken to a safe, but undisclosed location. CNN senior White House correspondent John King at a location since the White House was mainly evacuated about a block away. John.
Well, Judy, Karen Hughes working throughout the day in the White House Situation Room in the basement of the White House at a fortified structure.
A great deal during the day. It's going to last for a number of days. We told the president that we thought that the whole rescue effort would take a week or so or more. But the main focus right now, obviously, is on saving as many lives as possible. I think it's still possible for us to save a lot of the people that are there. They're not all there. All of our police and firefighters are not there. We have a lot of police and firefighters. Bernie, do you want to explain where the police and firefighters are?
No,
we don't. We do not, and we're not going to put one out until much later, after we get a better sense of the numbers we're talking about.
The police and the police deployment is, primary focus is down in southern Manhattan in the rescue effort, but we're tending to our policing needs all over the city. We, as the mayor said earlier, we're getting assistance from the governor and the National Guard. About 200 National Guardsmen about 2 hours ago, about an hour ago, I guess. There'll be another about 1,500 sometime this evening to come in to help us. And we're going to continue on the rescue efforts, but policing will go on in the rest of the city as usual.
For other possible actions, how is that going to work?
Obviously, we're in a high state of alert. We're looking at other government buildings, securing those buildings, securing other areas in the city. Right now, our primary focus and our efforts are in southern Manhattan.
One more, please.
I don't think anybody. The mayor and I were there this morning. I was there when the second plane hit the building. I was right underneath the building. I don't think anybody would have imagined that one of those airliners would have hit the building like that. Nobody in their right mind would have thought that would happen. So, and in this circumstance, it was something we couldn't avoid. We couldn't have stopped, even if we tried.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been listening to Mayor Rudy Giuliani, obviously fairly close to the site where the rescue operations are underway in New York City, reassuring that
The head of emergency management and I and a group of people had to with a lot of assistance, extricate ourselves.
What were your thoughts when you saw that? Is that anything you could
My thoughts were for us to try to keep focused on the best way to get out of there and to try to figure out how to all get to safety. I have to commend not only the people that I was with, but all of the people of the city. We literally escaped with them from the debris, and they handled themselves with bravery, they handled themselves with dignity, they handled themselves in a way that reduced the loss of life. We didn't have panic, we didn't have people running and hurting other people, and people of New York City really distinguished themselves. And I just want to say this once again. New York City is a lot stronger than this, and we're going to overcome it, and the people of New York City are going to give an example of how you stand up to terrorism. You just don't be afraid, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
The mayor and the police commissioner outside St. Vincent's Hospital. The mayor definitely saying New York is better than this. We're going to show them that we can overcome this. He says, and he emphasizes, our entire efforts in the city are going to be geared towards saving as many people as possible. Once again, he commends the people at St. Vincent's for the job they are doing in trying to save lives. Tom?
The numbers again, and these are very initial reports. They will change drastically as the hours and perhaps days go on. 600 people undergoing treatment at local hospitals, many of them at St. Vincent's, where the mayor is. 150 in critical condition, another 1,500 described as walking wounded by the mayor. They are the people he was talking about who were taken to Liberty State Park in New Jersey for treatment. We should also point out the state of New Jersey also has declared a state of emergency to help in the aftermath of this attack. The mayor also saying it'll be 2 days before we get a final figure the dead and injured. Let's recap now. We are just about at the top of the hour. It is 7 hours now since the worst attack on mainland U.S. soil in the history of this country, beginning at 8:48 this morning with a plane crashing into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. That was American Flight 11 from Boston bound for Los Angeles. That was quickly followed by United Airlines Flight 175 some 15 minutes later, also from Boston to Los Angeles. It also struck the World Trade Center, the North Tower. There are reports that the plane, at some point, there were reports the plane took off from Newark Airport. That information may have been updated at this time. Following that, 30 minutes later, when New York was still reeling from what happened here, at 9:45, an airplane crashed into the Pentagon outside Washington, D.C. Initial reports said it had crashed somewhere near the Pentagon. Further reports confirmed it hit a part of the Pentagon. One side of the building collapsed. People were inside. At 10 o'clock this morning, the first tower of the World Trade Center collapsed to the ground. At about the same time, a plane crashed in western Pennsylvania. That was United Airlines Flight 93, about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. We now have confirmation from the FBI that that plane was bound for Camp David, Maryland, the weekend White House. That plane may have been forced down. We do know it crashed outside Pittsburgh. At the time, United would not confirm where that plane was coming from. We do know now through the FBI that crash in Somerset County was the plane apparently bound for another attack on Camp David, Maryland.
And in between all of that, the World Trade Center, both towers collapse.
About 20 minutes later, the State Department evacuated because of reports of a bomb scare. It was 10:30 when the second tower of the Trade Center collapsed. 8 minutes later, another explosion at the World Trade Center. Apparently, bombs may have been placed at the base of those buildings. The mayor only saying he did not believe those blasts after the initial impact had anything to do with a gas leak. That was an initial report from the mayor. It has been, again, just over 7 hours since this began.
Joining us now on the set is Heather McMurtry. She is a disaster volunteer for the American Red Cross. Of course, a lot of physical injuries here if people have survived this horrible, horrible attack, but also a lot of psychological issues to deal with. Talk to us about this.
Well, basically, right now, families affected, Red Cross is reaching out with mental health counselors. These are people who are professional counselors but volunteer their time during times of disaster, and they're working with the families. They're at the airports of where the flights were destined to go, as well as the originating flights, working with those people. But even here in New York, if people didn't know people who have been affected by this, it's still, you might notice signs of stress within yourself. You might notice headaches, nightmares tonight, and this is all normal reactions to this kind of disaster. But if these symptoms continue, then that's the time to go see someone about it.
And people need to know this is going to happen. I mean, at first we're stunned, we don't believe it.
Right.
We get numb, perhaps some of us get angry, it's very frightening, but there will be a post-trauma period for many, many people.
Exactly. Right now, I just came through the streets of New York, and people are in shock right now, and that's the first symptom of what happens during a disaster. And then it really starts to set in, and again, stress, and sometimes people can really internalize it. So it's a good idea to talk. And we encourage New Yorkers to please call home if you have family out of state. Let them know you're okay. That's the #1 thing.
If you're a parent, you are bound to go through this psychological nightmare yourself, but you also have a child to deal with. How do you handle that?
Well, Red Cross is setting up disaster services in schools as well, where you can take children and, again, just encourage them to talk about it. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay.
Let's talk, Heather, a little bit before we let you go about what we can do. The mayor talks so much about helping each other, which New Yorkers have done in unbelievable numbers today. People banding together to save each other from what was happening here. Right. But the question is, in the days ahead, I'm sure that the blood supply is going to be severely strained. What can I do? What can people do to help in that regard?
Exactly. Well, today the Red Cross doesn't need blood because we're prepared all year round for disasters like this. So we're okay today. But in the next few days and the few weeks, if people could call 1-800-933-BLOOD. That's 1-800-933-BLOOD to give blood in the greater New York area. And if you're outside of the greater New York area, you can call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. And if people want to give in another way, if they can't donate blood, another thing they can do is to donate to 1-800-HELP-NOW so that the Red Cross can continue to provide disaster relief.
Right, like clothes and food, that kind of stuff?
Well, actually, what we need to do is give the victims exactly what they need, like shelters and things like that. So 1-800-HELP-NOW is for money, because people most need right now shelter and relief counseling.
Okay. Heather McMurtry, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all your advice.
Thank you, Heather. And don't forget the Red Cross, how much work they do in this types of situation. And right now, we honestly don't know what the extent of the damage, the devastation will be. We know physically the Pentagon's been hit. The World Trade Center is gone. We don't know the extent of the injuries. We only have preliminary reports. We have no idea how high the numbers of dead will go.
But what we do know is that no planes will be leaving, at least not today, maybe not through tomorrow.
The FAA has shut down all air traffic in this country until at least noon tomorrow. And stay tuned here to CBS because, frankly, there's no telling when that ban on air traffic will definitely be lifted again. The president is at a national security briefing at Offutt Air Force Base at SAC headquarters, Strategic Air Command, heavily guarded area in Nebraska, where decisions will be made regarding this. Dick Cheney is in Washington in charge from there. We want to go back to Jennifer McLogan, who's still at Kennedy Airport.
Is preparing to lock down and remove all passengers from the premises, busing them to Long Island, Queens, and Brooklyn hotels, anywhere they can find space. There are fewer than 500 here now at the American terminal behind me, and over at International Terminal 4, a decision has been made since we were last on the air with you to evacuate the airport for the remainder of the night as a security precaution, and security certainly on the minds of those stranded passengers we spoke with just a short time ago.
How could this happen? We were going to Israel and I brought the clipping from yesterday Newsday. Terror in Israel, thinking I was afraid to fly because of what's going there. And we were on an airplane today when this happened. We saw it happening.
We're sitting in the plane trying to take off to London. And we're looking at the Twin Towers, and they were on fire.
So I could see the Twin Towers going in smoke from our plane window, and then they made us get off the plane. And I you know, the chills up and down the arm at that point.
Some people
plane vacations, plane vacations, and you don't know if you come back home or not. It's terrible.
America allowed too many people to come in the country and to do what they want. You see, they're going to need some strict restrictions. They really do, because these people just come in here crazy, and all they want to do is to slaughter Americans.
I have a feeling somebody in national security was asleep at the switch. Got a little complacent. The Cold War was over. And guess what? It wasn't.
We haven't been told yet when we, the media, might be ordered away from Kennedy Airport. We'll be back to update you soon and hope to have some kind of initial word on when the airport's plan to reopen. For now, we're live at Kennedy International Airport. Jennifer McLogan, CBS 2.
Jennifer, thank you. We're going to head now over to Amy Nuzzo at Newark Airport. Amy, what's the update there?
Well, even here at Newark Airport, you can see just plumes of smoke over my shoulder. And this airport, of course, shut down completely. No planes leaving here anytime before noon tomorrow. As you know, one of those ill-fated flights originated here at Newark Airport. United Flight 93, a Boeing 757 from Newark to San Diego, crashed around 10:30 this morning in a rural area about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania. There's the video right there. Some 44 people on board, all believed dead. Witnesses reported seeing the large passenger plane take a nosedive to the ground and crash, but not before a passenger placed a frantic call from the bathroom to an emergency dispatcher saying, "We've been hijacked, we've been hijacked." That flight left Newark around 8:01 this morning. We're also told that that same plane is the plane that was attempting an attack on Camp David, Maryland, before crashing in western Pennsylvania. Let's go now to some video taken around the same time from Newark Airport as it was evacuated. Passengers and airline personnel filed out of the terminals by the thousands, many with no idea how to get home. Many were passengers stranded between cities, still stranded, wondering where to go tonight, as hotels in the area, we're told in the immediate area, are booked solid. Flight attendants appeared to be extremely shaken up as they left, knowing that any one of them could have been on board the hijacked plane.
They told us, you know, there was a national disaster and there was a bad accident at the World Trade Center and no flights were taken off. And I mean, we could see the Twin Towers, you know, up in flames, smoke. Can you imagine his families being on an airplane? I mean, can you imagine? Not knowing, can you? Very sad, very scary.
I feel that this is all being pre-planned. So, and this is a target. This, you know, we work for a target.
And they said other hotels are full from here. So I don't know what we're doing.
My daughter's fiance works in Wall Street, and his father works by the World Trade. So I did manage to find out that both of them got home safe, and you know, my heart goes to those.
Hundreds of passengers are still on the premises, again, not knowing where to go tonight as the airlines work to find some place for them and some method of getting them out of here. Continental Airlines has opened up a corner of Lower Terminal C to hand out sandwiches and drinks to some of those stranded passengers, as is being done at the other terminals as well here at Newark Airport. Again, passengers having no idea when they can get out of here, as no planes will be leaving here until at least noon tomorrow. Reporting live from Newark Airport, Amy Nuzzo, CBS 2.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, we want to go now to Hazel Sanchez. As you look at videotape of what happened this morning, that is actually the second impact, plane hitting at about 9:02 to 9:04 this morning. Since that time, as you know, both towers have collapsed. They are gone. Hazel Sanchez is in the information center. She has some updates for us on the situation at area hospitals and, in fact, hospitals throughout New York State. Hazel?
And that's right, Todd. Hundreds and hundreds of people injured because of today's disaster. As I mentioned earlier, St. Vincent's Hospital asking for help, asking any doctors or nurses out there to give them a call if they can lend a helping hand. Also, because of the number of injuries today, Albany, Syracuse, and Westchester County hospitals have all been placed on alert. The Federal Emergency Management Agency sending 8 urban search rescue teams to New York City. That's about 72 people on each of those teams. And those rescue specialists have been trained to find victims in disastrous events like today. Also, the aircraft carriers on their way here to New York City. They're identified as the USS John F. Kennedy and also the USS George Washington, as are guided missile cruisers. They're on their way to deal with any air or sea threats. And the New York City primary is, of course, scheduled today, postponed. No date has been rescheduled yet. Governor Pataki says he will reschedule it once we all get through this. The SEC will decide sometime tonight if the markets will open on Wednesday. And a travel note, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels are still closed. The GWB upper level outbound is now open. The Staten Island bridges to New Jersey are open, but the crossings to New York are not open yet. And one minor event note, the Latin Grammys, they were scheduled to be tonight at Miami's American Airlines Arena. That event has been canceled, and that's the latest here from the information desk. So back to you.
Interesting note, Hazel, just to point out, we had reported much earlier today that Major League Baseball had canceled games today. It's the first time they have canceled games since the death of FDR.
That's been a
the
long
first time Major
ago.
League Baseball is canceled, just to give you an idea of the impact on this country and what will go down in history as the worst attack ever.
Joining us on the set now is CBS 2 reporter Amy Stone and CBS 2 photographer Barry Weiss. They were actually sent out earlier today to cover a fashion show at Bryant Park and got diverted into all of this and almost lost their lives. First of all, we are so glad you are here for a lot of reasons. Tell us your story. Tell us what happened. This is very overwhelming.
Well, usually, Barry, you're not used to sitting up here, but Barry is my main man behind the camera. He's the one that's shooting all the video, and he's a bit shaken up. But we went out, and right when we heard about the plane crash, we left Bryant Park, of course, and came down toward the World Trade Center, where we were shooting along the way, shooting video along the way, and then we came upon an actual engine of one of the planes which had hit a building, which we have video of. There's the engine, the FBI taking shots at the engine.
That was on Murray Street.
And then here it is, Barry. Talk about what you did.
Amy was standing next to me, took a shot of the tower. All of a sudden, Amy said, Barry, Barry. It came down. The police are screaming, move out of the way, move out of the way. I saw that. I took my camera, you'll see, I took it off the tripod and started running, and within seconds we were engulfed with black smoke.
That's coming at you very fast right behind you, correct?
It was amazing.
And at first you're just kind of standing there in shock, and you don't even think to run because you can't believe what you're seeing in front of you, and you don't. And it seemed like it was far enough away that it wasn't going to come this way, and all of a sudden you just see this cloud of smoke. I mean, I kept thinking of the horror film The Blob coming at you, and people running, screaming, and that's what it was. And you couldn't run fast enough because you were just over.
We got separated, and I was screaming for Amy. And then after a while, you couldn't even speak because the smoke and debris was in your lungs and your mouth.
Were you blinded by the smoke and
you
debris?
couldn't see. I couldn't see my hand this far away from me.
We're all cleaned up.
Couldn't see.
Relatively speaking,
I could not see my hand. A young man, God bless him, grabbed my arm. And because I was choking, he grabbed my arm. He said, come on this way. He grabbed a lady who was crying,
and
grabbed
he told you
her.
to breathe through your shirt.
And told me to pull my shirt over my mouth.
New Yorkers helping each other.
Helping each other. Grabbed the both of us and took us to Beekman Street, where the dust had subsided.
Amy, what about you? You two were separated.
We got separated.
What happened?
And you can talk to people in the newsroom. I immediately got on my phone and just started screaming for Barry because, you know, this is my main man, and I looked behind me and saw this cloud, and the cloud had already captured Barry, and it was coming toward me, and I just thought he was gone. But you know, there were portable oxygen units all over the city, right in front of 100 Center Street, and they were there. Thank God for Barry. And we've been coughing, but you know, this is not. You know, we're doing great.
It is our job to cover the news. You almost lost your lives today, Barry. I know you're very choked up and overwhelmed now. Amy, I don't know how you're maintaining it, girl. I don't.
Well, you look around, and we're much better off than a lot of people. This is nothing. We're coughing a little bit, and Barry, his blood pressure is a little high right now. But you know what? When you look at the aftermath and what's to come, this is nothing. And I'm just, you know.
Thank God you're both here.
We walked along the streets. We saw baby carriages, shoes, briefcases, pocketbooks, clothing. People just dropped everything and ran.
Yeah, there's shoes. That's the one thing. There's shoes everywhere. There's like one shoe here and one shoe there, and papers, because we got right in there, and there was the ashes everywhere, and in the ashes you just saw papers and partially burnt papers, and you just wonder how it's ever going to be cleaned up.
You know, I tell people this. I've been to hell.
Yes,
this is hell.
yes.
Never seen anything like this in all my years. Never. I never want to see it again.
Very wise, Sammy Stone. We're so glad you're here and you're safe, and thank you for doing your job so well
We're just happy
helping
that
other people.
We, as everyone out there has lost people, Channel 2 has lost a couple of technicians at the World Trade Center, and we wish their families
God bless them.
God bless.
We're glad you two are so safe and able to come out here and talk to us. I know that your lives will be forever changed, as will a lot of people,
All of
but
ours.
the fact that you saw this and we're so close.
It's surreal. It really is. You look and you don't think you're so close, and you've just never seen anything like it. No one has.
Well, listen, thanks.
Okay.
I'm very glad you're okay.
Thank you, yes.
Amy, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
All right, we want to go now to Rose Wally, who's at Bellevue Hospital, with an update for us on the situation, the casualties, and the treatment going on there. Rose.
So far, they're telling us that there are about 400 plus patients at Beekman Hospital right now, hundreds more at St. Vincent's Hospital, about 150 at Bellevue, 2 DOA that we know of at that hospital, at Bellevue Hospital. The need for blood at Bellevue seems to be the most critical at this time. However, officials are telling us at this point that they have closed down the blood centers because of an overwhelming response of donors. They are, however, taking appointments from people who still do want to donate blood. Of course, that blood will be needed in the days to come. They are specifically looking for type O blood, the universal donor, and if you do have plans to donate in the next few days, make sure that you bring a blood donor card. Also, we can tell you here at NYU Medical Center, nurses, doctors, all the staff that they can possibly think of have been transported, shuttled over to the scene itself to try and treat the victims that are there that cannot be moved. Of course, thousands of people still stuck in rubble and the debris. Unknown at this time how many are actually there and how many casualties are going to come from all of this. We're live at NYU Medical Center. Rose Wally, CBS 2. Back to you.
Thank you, Rose, and hello again. Dana, Tyler, and Ernie Anastas continuing CBS 2's live coverage of the World Trade Center disaster today, this morning, until the afternoon.
7 hours, actually, since the attack on America. It all began at 9 o'clock this morning. A deadly terrorist attack on New York City and Washington, D.C. today. The targets, of course, you know, the World Trade Center right on your screen in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington. The World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, as we know it, is no more. Both towers have been wiped out, leveled to the ground.
The drama started, as you said, just before 9. 2 airplanes, 2 separate jets, American Airlines planes on a suicide mission believed to be, crashed into the towers about 18 minutes apart. Then a short time later, each tower coming down separately. Massive damage, devastation. You can see all of the smoke there. You can hear the screaming people running for their lives from these office buildings. The most tragic loss today, and it's going to be a while till we know. As you see the tower coming down there, falling right.
That's an incredible sight.
It is an incredibly sad sight.
We were looking at it, in fact, Dana, we said it reminded us in some ways of what happened back in 1986 with the Challenger. It's that same eerie feeling you have no control over, and you can't imagine that this has happened.
You can't imagine. So many of us have been at the top, too, of, the observation deck. Tourists go. We're all tourists in our own town. I've been up there a million times to see this great city. The most tragic toll today, the death toll numbers, we don't have many numbers, and the mayor cautioning that it is going to be a while as we look for the survivors in this. They're still there right now as we speak, looking for survivors of this horrible accident. Although we have heard at least 5 people have died. The injured placed well over 1,000, 1,500. The mayor expecting that number to rise. One hospital alone that's gotten a lot of credit here, St. Vincent, which is big trauma center, 600 people in all New York hospitals, 150 critical at this point.
We also have to tell you that a lot of people have been unaccounted for. Officials believe that probably about 10,000 people were inside that Twin Tower this morning at the time of the attack. You know it holds anywhere from 40 to 50,000, but we're told approximately 10,000 people were inside. And of course, there were hundreds of people on the ground, including police and firefighters. There's more to the story, of course. This has developed into Washington today.
And before we get to that, let's check with Cindy Hsu in the newsroom with some late information. Cindy.
Okay, Dana and Ernie, we are getting some incredible pictures in right now. Somebody was on the ground, just happened to be taking still shots of the first plane. That was the American Flight 11 that went into the first World Trade Center tower. There you see, it's just, over the Manhattan skyline, nothing happening. The second shot, it has already gone in. And this is American Flight 11 from Boston to LA. 92 people were aboard, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. And as you see there, they also caught the explosion. About an hour later at 10:05, that first tower did collapse. These are the first pictures we're getting in of the first plane, again, American Flight 11, that hit the World Trade Center Tower 1 shortly before 9 o'clock. Dana and Ernie?
Thank you very, very much. Let's continue. We were talking about Washington, too, because this tragedy has hit more than New York. In Washington this morning, while we were dealing with this on our TV screens, there was another attack, a plane, United Airlines jet striking the heart of a U.S. military complex. Also there, loss of life, no numbers exactly. Then a second plane that was either targeting the Pentagon or Camp David. Late word, it was targeting Camp David, presidential retreat in Maryland. That plane forced down by U.S. fighter planes.
And of course, there was another plane that was said to be hijacked that crashed near the Pittsburgh area, and that happened at around 10 a.m. We're told that about 266 people possibly have been killed in those 4 separate airline crashes. That's 266 passengers and crew members aboard those 4 flights.
And there are pictures that we have, and we'll bring those to you as well in the area that's 80 miles away from Pittsburgh, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, and just blighted area now where you can see there's burned up. And these were all big planes, too, with a lot of fuel on board.
And you see the shot over and over again. Here in New York, that's a huge cloud of dust, some smoke that still blankets the lower Manhattan area. You know, airports are closed, top security is in effect at all bridges, tunnels, landmarks, and other locations. And also, 2 U.S. warships are heading into the New York harbor for security. So we have police, fire, the National Guard, hospitals, all working feverishly to deal with the victims and the injured. Blood is needed. Doctors, nurses have all been called in, and all emergency services in New York are working to full capacity, stretched to the limits, to say the least.
Now, the President Bush, who was in Florida this morning when this happened, then moved to Louisiana, now has moved to a secure place out west, Strategic Air Command, under tight security. He quickly vowing to find those responsibles, he said, to hunt them down, and he assures the American people that security measures were in place, are in place, and that it is our resolve in this country, as every leader, the president, the governor, and the mayor have said, we will pass this so-called test, and we will not be shaken. Yes, we will be saddened, deeply saddened by this, but America will stand tall through this.
And let's get right to what's going on right now at St. Vincent's Hospital. For example, Whitney Casey is standing by to tell us about the injured and the work that's being done there. Whitney.
Well, that's right. You heard Mayor Giuliani talk about the work that's been done here. He said when he flew down the street earlier this morning, he felt very comforted by the fact that there were EMS, emergency workers, and doctors, like you see behind me, waiting out in front. Now, it's been an ebb and flow here all day. Right now, it's a short respite, but in probably just about a half an hour, we'll see ambulance pulling up here and all of these surgeons and emergency workers attending to those people. Now, the number we have here right now is 267 that are here at St. Vincent's, 30 in critical condition, 3 have now died, and they're telling us also that there are about 30 firefighters, police officers, and EMT workers that are being treated here right now. So those numbers, again, 267, 3 dead. Reporting live from St. Vincent's, Whitney Casey, CBS 2.
Thank you, Whitney. What an effort underway in this city. And, of course, this will continue all afternoon, all evening. This work is far from over, and as the story develops, we certainly want to share whatever information we have with you.
There has been also, as you can imagine, an outpouring of spiritual support. Edward Cardinal Egan, the head of New York's Roman Catholics, spoke that we should all be prayerful. He was especially supportive in offering prayer for the doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, rescue rescue workers who are working so hard on this day, and that those who pray should pray for them. In Washington, D.C., there was a mass today at the National Cathedral, 3,000 to 4,000 people there. And just checking around the suburbs, I know that churches are open this afternoon, and synagogues, places of worship, if that's something you want to do, that the doors of many places are open for you to offer your spiritual thoughts.
And those words, of course, echoed by President Bush earlier today when he asked everyone to pray for all of those people who are working so hard right now to help those who really need the help. Cindy Hsu is standing by right now with an update of information for us. Cindy, let's go to you in the newsroom.
Well, Ernie, within the hour, we heard from White House advisor Karen Hughes. She addressed the nation, and she said that the federal government is running as best it can under the circumstances. Here's more of what she said.
The federal government is acting to help local communities with search and rescue and emergency management operations, to take all appropriate precautions to protect our citizens, and to identify those responsible for these despicable attacks on the American people. While some federal buildings have been evacuated for security reasons and to protect our workers, your federal government continues to function effectively.
We were just listening to Karen Hughes. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more of what she said. She said that the terrorist attack has forced President Bush into hiding as a precaution since the White House was under threat of attack. That his whereabouts have been kept secret for much of the day, but now that he's reached the safety of the Strategic Air Command in Omaha, we can tell you that he flew aboard Air Force One, which is a virtual flying fortress. He is at a top security air base in Louisiana, and before heading to Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, which is the home to the Strategic Air Command. Now, Mrs. Bush and a handful of aides were whisked away by motorcade straight to a safe and secret location away from the White House, and their 19-year-old twin daughters were also moved to secure secret locations. Barbara, as you know, attends Yale University. Jenna is at the University of Texas, and the only ones left in the White House are a skeleton team of advisors in the basement situation room. Dan and Ernie, back to you.
Cindy, thank you. This has changed everyone's lives in this country. All air traffic was quickly stopped. Planes leaving the United States airports, coming into the United States airports. Also, just entertainment-wise, Brett was here talking about National League Baseball calling off games, the Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards. Broadway shows are canceled in New York. Box offices closed indefinitely. Walt Disney World in Florida, Disneyland in California, Universal Studios in Southern California, all shut down. Major movie studios, the list is endless. Production on television shows, talk shows, everything shut down. TFN, till further notice, again, as you watch the pictures that happened just after 9 this morning, as 2 aircraft crashed into each of the World Trade Center towers this morning.
As we watch, of course, Dana, everyone asks, you know, what happened here? Who is responsible? To give you some of that information, so far the Islamic Jihad reportedly is saying that the attacks are related to the violence in the Mideast. Keeping in mind the September 17th date is the anniversary of the signing of the Camp David Accord. That, of course, was some 23 years ago. Now, also today, reports that the Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine and Osama bin Laden all set to be involved and reportedly a part of what happened here today. There had been warnings. There had been some reports issued some time ago, 3 weeks ago, from London. Osama bin Laden saying that something would be planned, some type of attack against the United States for its support of Israel. And we also heard earlier today PLO leader Yasser Arafat condemning the attacks today. We have some reaction right now. Jim Kallstrom is on tape right now. This was a statement that he made a little bit earlier. He is the former head of the FBI in New York City. Let's take a listen to see what Mr. Kallstrom has to say.
The notion that we can be absolutely certain we can't be. So those of us in law enforcement over the years have dreaded but thought that this day might come. Not exactly what happened. Obviously, no one can imagine the immense tragedy that we're looking at. But the notion that some terrorist act like this would come, it was just a matter of when that would be.
That was Jim Kallstrom. Again, you're looking at pictures from this morning of the thousands and thousands of people who had gone for a normal Tuesday day of work, and then were told to head north,
leave, get out of Lower Manhattan. Marcia Kramer and Lou Young have been following with the governor and the mayor. They had a news conference in the past hour and a half at an undisclosed location. The mayor, the governor, and Mr. Carrick, Bernard Carrick, the police commissioner, just talking about how the city will continue throughout this horrible day into the evening. Marcia, can you give us an update?
Well, first of all, what you need to know is that because of all of Lower Manhattan is having a problem, what they've done is that they've actually moved the command center from Lower Manhattan to an undisclosed location in Manhattan. All of the agencies that would normally be responding to an emergency have been moved out of Lower Manhattan, and they're in an undisclosed location with the mayor. The mayor has gathered with him all of his major cabinet members. The head of the Emergency Management Task Force is with him. His deputy mayors are with him, and all others, including the health commissioner, are with him, trying to formulate a policy to try to get through this crisis. The governor is also with him, and what you need to know here is that they are trying to have a concerted effort, a concerted response where the state tries to help New York City get through this crisis. The most immediate thing for New York City right now is to replace the number of fire and policemen who were rushed to the scene. They've been working there since 9 o'clock this morning, some of whom have unfortunately passed away because they were on the scene when the building collapsed. And so right now they're bringing in reinforcements from the state. Governor Pataki is bringing in over about 2,000 people from the National Guard and the state police, and they are going to spell the New York City emergency workers in trying to find, getting people out of the buildings, trying to find if there are people that are still alive, and trying to find out if there are also any dead bodies. Still, there is no count as to how many people have been injured, but when Mayor Giuliani was asked about this, he said, the number is more than any of you, any of us can bear. It was a very grim mayor, a very grim governor, and very grim members of the mayor's inner circle who surrounded the mayor as he was trying to talk about dealing with this crisis. We should also know, though, that the mayor himself was actually caught in the building collapse. After the first plane hit World Trade Center 1, Mayor Giuliani's first instinct was to rush to the scene. He rushed to park in Church Street. Then another plane hit, and then after that, the building collapsed in and of itself. Giuliani at that point was near Barclay Street, 75 Barclay Street, and the mayor had to find an emergency route out. In fact, it took the mayor about 10 minutes to find a way safely out of the building. One of the things that's going on now is the question about how New York City and also federal law enforcement authorities are going to be able to respond to this, because in the same building with the city's emergency preparedness office in World Trade Center number 7 was the Secret Service office. We don't know at this point how many Secret Service officers and emergency personnel were in that building. What we do know that the building caught fire. It's in danger of collapse. It may already have collapsed by the time we're talking about it. That is a concern. Also, the mayor is calling on New Yorkers to pray for people, and also he and Governor Pataki both want to send a message to the people who did this. They call them barbaric terrorists. They want to send a message that New Yorkers are strong, New Yorkers will get through this, and most importantly, the United States, with the governor behind it, with the mayor behind it, are going to seek retribution. They're not saying when, they're not saying how, but they say that there will be vengeance, and the people responsible will be forced to pay. Reporting live someplace in Manhattan, I'm Marcia Kramer.
Marcia, we wanted to know, have the mayor or the governor announced when we'll be hearing from them again?
We expect another press conference sometime within the next hour. Obviously, both Lou Young and myself will be there, and we'll come out and report to you just as soon as possible. But right now, I think that the important message that Mayor Giuliani wants people to do is to keep calm. They've told me repeatedly they don't think that there are going to be any more terrorist attacks here, but of course you never know. And they want people to stay calm, be calm, pray for the people who may have lost their lives, pray for the injured, and if they can, to donate blood to help out the cause.
Marcia, of course, we know that all of this boils down to information, getting information out to what's going on right now and what may happen. Have you been given any type of a schedule as far as the rest of the evening and even into tomorrow as to what we can expect? I know you talked about a possible news conference. Is there anything else that's pending?
Well, what they're trying to do now is to develop a way. First of all, they want to develop a list of names, the people who might have been in the World Trade Center, the people who might have been on those planes, and people who might have been in surrounding buildings that were affected when the World Trade Centers collapsed on each other. And so what they're going to do, they're calling on businesses and corporations to help develop a phone link system so that people who are worried that their loved ones may possibly have been injured or hurt can call a hotline to get some information. You know, to get names of people who may have been taken to hospitals, the walking wounded, people who may have been injured. But right now, that's their task, setting up some kind of a phone link system that will take care of the thousands, maybe tens of thousands of calls that they're going to be getting. So it's going to take some time, and that's why they haven't announced it yet, because they expect such a volume of people who are looking for police officers and firemen who responded to the crisis, to people who worked in the World Trade Center area, to people who might have just by happenstance been traveling there either as tourists or whatever. So they're trying to set up some mechanism so that the loved ones can call in and find out if their loved ones are okay, are in a hospital, which hospital, and how to contact them.
Because there
we
are so many.
expect that at the next press availability, the city will be making those lines available, and I can assure you we'll bring you those numbers just as soon as we get them.
Very good. So many people involved here. Marcia, you're on standby. We'll come back to you in a while.
We had spoken earlier about President Bush, who has been all over the country today, Florida, Louisiana, the Strategic Air Command headquarters in Nebraska for a National Security Council meeting teleconference. The Associated Press, we just got word, is also now saying, though, that President Bush is returning to the White House. We'll keep you posted on the president's whereabouts on this critical day.
And, of course, earlier the president did talk about prayer and thinking about the people who are trying to help others right now. We have had numerous reports of leaders calling for us to stop, think for a moment, and to pray. No better place than St. Patrick's Cathedral. Pablo Guzman is standing by live right there. Pablo, why don't you tell us what's going on at that point?
There are people here who are preparing for a 5:30 service, we're told, that will be presided over by Cardinal Egan himself here at St. Patrick's. There is extra police presence, as you can see. There is always some kind of police presence at St. Patrick's because of the kind of days that we live through, and you know about some of the irrational attacks that have taken place here in the past. This is obviously quite different, and for those people who don't know quite what this is all about, Charlie, step out with me. We're at 5th Avenue and 51st Street. All you got to do is look down 5th Avenue and see a sight that you normally do not see. Those billowing clouds of smoke from lower Manhattan really tell the story far more than I ever could. We were at the New York Blood Center just before we came here. We'll have some pictures and sound to share with you. They were overwhelmed. Now, you know, these are folks that normally say, hey, we need blood. We always have a blood shortage. That did not happen today. As soon as New Yorkers heard about what happened, they came out in the hundreds. They actually had to tell people to take tickets and come back tomorrow, unless you're type O, that they do need. We'll have pictures and sound from that for you a bit later on. Back to you.
Great turnout. Thank you, Pablo.
All right, the timetable, if you're just getting home, 4:38 this afternoon, and some people who may have started early to get out of town, it has been a long trek out of town, and here is how this day started here, the attack on America. Sometime just before 9 a.m., the South Tower hit by an American Airlines jet. 18 minutes later, the North Tower hit by an American Airlines jet. Air traffic in the entire country closed, shut down. First time in history the FAA has made that decision. We heard from President Bush, who said, we'll hunt down who's ever responsible for this. Then again, 10 o'clock, and these are happening very quickly, these events, another plane, a United Airlines jet, crashes near the Pentagon. Again, people injured, people evacuated. Back here in New York at the same time, the South Tower of the World Trade Center crumbling to the ground. People are running uptown, running for their lives, debris flying all over the place. You can't see. People so frightened. The North Tower collapsing moments after that, and then another plane crash, a United Airlines jet, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and it's believed that one, is that the one, Ernie, that might have been intended to have gone to Camp David?
Yes, that's a possibility. We don't really confirm that right now, but that's a possibility.
All hijacked.
Yes. There were so many people, of course, involved in this today, people who were just, you know, quietly, innocently going to work, going about their business, and we've had a number of accounts on the air from those who have come into the studio or on the telephone. Larry Kofsky, sort of one of our own, if you will, CBSMarketWatch.com, was down on Wall Street in that area doing his job. Larry, you're joining us on the air right now, and you have personal story to tell us about where you were and what you saw.
Well, Ernie, I was at the New York Stock Exchange where I normally spend my time covering Wall Street, and we heard the initial reports that there was something going on at the World Trade Center, and I was asked to go down and take a look and see what I could see. And I was standing at Broadway and Liberty Street and looking up with a number of basically other curiosity seekers when the second plane hit, which we actually didn't see. It hit from behind, from where we were standing. But there was just an eruption of debris and smoke and fire from the building, and people turned tail and were running as fast as they could. I got knocked down a couple times.
Were you covered by?
Well, the back of my shirt got hit pretty good.
See it right here.
I was knocked down twice and made my way around to Park Row right by City Hall, where I was watching and talking to some other people. And as we were talking, we saw number 2 World Trade. I guess it was the first one that came down, and it just imploded and fell down. And at that point, the smoke and the debris was just it was almost a scene from a movie.
Yes.
And people,
it's been described like that almost all day.
And people were, as you just said, running for their lives. And at that point, we made our way uptown, and here we are.
How did you make your way uptown?
On foot, all the way.
All the way.
Can you talk about we've heard about the dust and we've heard about the rubble. Tell me about what the ground felt like. Did you think it just, I mean, was it the huge vibration with that explosion? Was it loud also? What was the sound?
It was loud, but that second plane, it didn't shake the ground as you would think an airliner hitting an office building like this would have done. It was, the ground didn't shake. In fact, my first reaction was that it must have been a gas explosion in the building that was already burning, because I could not have conceived that an airplane...
This is what you saw, Larry?
That's
you were there, you saw that.
I was down there.
You'll never forget this.
I will never forget it. It's still in my hair.
It was hard to breathe too, right? Or
well,
swallow,
I managed to stay away from the wave of smoke, so from that perspective, I guess I did fairly well. But there were a lot of people running, and it seemed as I walked uptown, the further uptown I got, the less chaotic the situation was.
Were you able to talk to some of those people there that were running? Did you stop it? Were you able to stop it?
I did. In fact, I spoke to one gentleman who was on a ferry coming down the Hudson as number 1 was hit. And
what did he say?
Well, he was actually reading his paper and heard it and looked up and said that at that point the ferry, which was supposed to stop at the World Financial Center, just kept right on going and stopped elsewhere downtown. But there was a lot of chaos and concern aboard the boat because people didn't know at that point what was going on.
Now, on another note, trading, as you know, has halted on Wall Street. And there are a number of investment companies that are located right down in that area, of course. What is the status now as far as tomorrow? Do you have any information, since that is your line of work?
I've heard nothing specifically other than the fact that the New York Stock Exchange is holding a conference call later on this afternoon. Pure speculation on my part, cannot imagine, just in terms of the logistics of getting people in and out of downtown Manhattan, that they can open up, certainly not tomorrow.
They've talked about how other buildings, I mean, the mayor was saying it's still unclear what other nearby buildings, business offices, investment firms were racked by this.
And there were plenty of investment firms in the Trade Center itself that had offices that were clearly destroyed today. It's surreal. You look at the pictures and it's...
You can't believe it.
I was in the building at 8:35 getting off the train, walking through, and...
Incredible. Fortunately, you are here to talk to us today. I'm sure you managed to get to a telephone to call somebody at home and let people know you were okay.
My wife was quite upset. She would rather that I be there than here, but...
we appreciate
there's no moving out of New York at this point.
Okay, Larry Kofsky, CBSMarketWatch.com, eyewitness, and you lived it, and you're here to talk about it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Numbers of injuries and deaths are still being counted. It will be some time before we know the full impact of this, although the mayor saying at least 2,100 wounded, 600 sent to area hospitals as they continue to work. You know, these pictures we're showing you now are from this morning, at least these right here, but the work continues ferociously downtown. As the smoke, as you're seeing a live picture of what is left of the World Trade Center, we will all have to change our view as we look at the southern tip of Manhattan. We see Lady Liberty off there, a tiny little island there on the right as she stands there in her harbor that has been so very hurt today on this tragic day in American history, and no Twin Towers there to see anymore. But the smoke continues.
And we had mentioned earlier, Dana, of course, that a lot of people are still unaccounted for. That is the job underhand right now. Officials believe that about 10,000 people were inside the Twin Towers this morning.
No, for our company, just under 200.
And in that building?
You know, I don't know. You mean for our company?
In that building, how many employees did your company have in that building?
About 200.
Oh, I see. In that building,
Yeah.
for that on that 88th floor.
Joan, is it your sense that everyone in your company managed to get out?
I don't know. I do wish I know. I fervently hope they did.
I mean, did you get the feeling that when that plane hit, that people were leaving quickly? There was no waiting around.
The problem is, I was on the 88th floor, and I was told that the people on the 89th floor were told to remain in their offices.
They were told. Who was saying that?
There was an announcement coming over the PA system on the Trade Center. There was a fire in One World Trade Center. Were 2 towers not affected. Please return to work and remain in your office.
And you disregarded that announcement?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big time.
Why did you disregard it, Joan? Did you?
I just felt it was safer to leave, and if we could, and everything was fine, we would just come back later.
If you hadn't disregarded that announcement, Joan
I
Feldman?
would be dead. I sincerely hope that everyone got out. I mean, that is just my prayer.
I think it is all of our prayers. Joan?
We have a lot of very good people.
I'm sure, yes. Joan, thank you so much for calling.
Again,
We'll try and get that number on again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And Joan, we wish you the best, and we wish the best for all of your fellow co-workers as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Joan. Celeste Ford has been covering this story from the airport angle all day for us. She's at JFK and on the phone, I believe. Celeste, can you hear us?
Yes, Bill. Right now I'm at the Port Authority headquarters at Kennedy Airport. We're waiting for a briefing in about an hour from now. Meantime, the Federal Aviation Administration is saying that all air travel in this country will be suspended until tomorrow at noon at the earliest. The Port Authority says even if air travel resumes sometime tomorrow, we can expect all sorts of delays and disruptions for the rest of the week. If you look around Kennedy Airport right now, you'll see that it is virtually empty. No cars are allowed into this entire complex. All the passengers have either gone home, which has been quite difficult if you're a resident of Manhattan because you can't get there, or they're staying in area hotels. The airlines are accommodating them. At Kennedy, 2 of the 9 terminals were closed and evacuated. Those 2 terminals with a very high alert are United and American Airlines, which were targeted earlier in the day by terrorism. The Kennedy Tower was also evacuated. Over at LaGuardia, I was there earlier today, all the terminals were evacuated. It was quite a mess because you have thousands of air passengers standing on the access roads. There's no place for them to wait. Lots of confusion. And it's just been a very hard time for a lot of air travelers. An interesting statistic, there's something like 2 million air travelers every day in this country. So you get a sense, in this country alone, how many people are affected. Then all those other international flights that would have come in here. I'm told that on the east and west coast, that most of those international flights were diverted to Canada. So it's been quite a scene here, and we hope to have more information within the hour.
Celeste, I know air travel suspended until noon tomorrow, but I would also imagine there are a lot of people who probably don't want to get on a plane tomorrow at any time or even for the next few days.
You know, people tend to go both ways on that. They say, well, this kind of thing could happen anytime, anywhere. There's nothing you can do about it. And other people I talked to today, one woman said exactly that. I don't think I can get on a plane again. And then think about the position that they're in. How lucky they are that they didn't get on a plane today that ended up being hijacked. That's what keeps going through my mind.
That's a very good point.
You know, it's those poor souls.
Celeste, we should point out that while you're talking on the phone, we are looking at firefighters clearly trying to battle a blaze at 7 World Trade, and they are afraid, we're told, city officials are afraid that this building is going to collapse, so we're keeping an eye on that. Celeste, describe, if you will, the security measures again around JFK right now.
Well, you can't see all of them because you have the Port Authority police. They're in the terminals, but we're told that they have a heightened level of security. One of the problems they had earlier today is that their internal communication system, all their in-house phone systems throughout the Port Authority went down, and you may know that the hub of the Port Authority operations was in the two towers, the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And that's another angle here on how it's affecting their logistics. An untold number of employees were in that building and have been affected by this, and they're grappling with that at the same time while they're trying to keep things running here at the airports.
If the goal was to shut down the city, and indeed parts of the country, then that goal has been successful.
It sure has. Celeste, stay on the phone, because I do just want to update our viewers so they can know what to expect for the next few hours. We have obviously been on the air nonstop since 9 o'clock this morning, since this incident took place. Coming up at 5 o'clock, we will begin our 5 o'clock broadcast, essentially. We will switch anchor teams here at 6 o'clock again. We'll be on the air with continuing our local coverage. And then perhaps at 6:30, I believe, we will be going to Network, to World News, and to Peter Jennings. And then, of course, we'll be back. This is a major, major story, and we will continue to cover every angle of it and bring you as much information as we can, as quickly as we get it. And that's the key here. We can only work as fast as those people who are getting the information to us. And you've seen throughout the day how difficult it is for the mayor and for these rescue workers, you know, to gather that information. So we're just working as quickly as we can here.
Our communication systems have been severely damaged and battered as well. And I want to take this opportunity as we near the 5 o'clock hour and we switch it over to Rob and Roz in a few minutes to thank our crews on the ground who have at times risked their lives and their health and safety. Our photographers and our reporters, all of them, all day out there trying to cover the story and keep New Yorkers abreast of what's happening as we watch 7 World Trade up in flames. That's the smoke you see. Officials are concerned that that too will collapse. Earlier today, we did show some Palestinians celebrating this act of terrorism, and in all due fairness, okay, as we take a look at ABC News amateur exclusive video that we have of Ground Zero, I want to say that a couple statements have been issued from the American Muslim Political Coordination Council in Washington today, condemning the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington and offering condolences to the families of those who are killed or injured. The Council on American Islamic Relations in Washington calling on Muslims nationwide to offer whatever assistance they can to help the victims of today's terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, and to help authorities as well.
And I asked Celeste to stay on the phone. Celeste, are you still out there? No, I guess not. I know all our reporters are busy putting together reports for our 5 and 6 o'clock broadcast. You are, again, looking at pictures of Ground Zero. This is ABC exclusive video. Just to keep you up to date with the latest information we have, we know right now that 7 World Trade is on fire. Firefighters have told us that perhaps they are going to try and just let the blaze go out on its own. More than likely, though, it would appear that building is going to collapse and become the 3rd collapsed building in Lower Manhattan.
Fully evacuated, the firefighter told Jeff Rossino, and that, of course, is good news. We also have Cheryl Fiandaca at an undisclosed location with Mayor Giuliani and New York Governor George Pataki, who are monitoring the situation undisclosed because they are afraid for security reasons to tell us where they are, but they are trying to command the emergency preparedness operations of the city and the state and the National Guard that the governor has mobilized to help us deal with this. Again, 8 federal teams from the FBI's Urban Search and Rescue Task Force have been sent to New York. 4 have been sent to Washington to help recover victims and help in search and rescue at the Pentagon there.
And coming up between 5:30, somewhere around then, there is going to be a Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Also, just to let you know, schools, we are told at this point, are going to be open tomorrow. But please stay tuned to Channel 7 because that could change. We do not know if it's changed, but right now, schools are open tomorrow.
You heard Joan Feldman with the brokerage firm on the 88th floor of Tower Number 2 call in, and we urge you, if you were a victim of this and you are looking for people, please call our news desk. Please call Channel 7. We'd like to hear from you. We are trying to put together some of your stories. In addition, you saw some of the dramatic video throughout the day. The reporters' own stories and the stories of the people who escaped, we are putting together for some amazing and dramatic stories for the 5 and 6 o'clock editions of Eyewitness News.
And of course, the city is basically locked down, shut down, closed. I don't know how which word best describes the situation in the city right now. You want to get into the city? You can't. Bridges coming into the city are closed off. There is limited train service in and out of Grand Central. Subway service operating, but again, your best bet right now is probably to stay home, stick at home, and just make sure that your family and your friends are okay.
World Trade Center, built in 1970, Twin Towers, the symbol of not just New York, but American capitalism and the economy of the United States. 50,000 workers at the height anytime during the day, 70,000 daily visitors, 200,000 tons of steel, 44,000 windows, all of them gone and destroyed today.
Everything changed at 9 o'clock this morning. Let's go to Jim Dolan. Is that right? Jim Dolan in the newsroom. Jim.
Diana, let's talk about some of those outages. You were referring to the mass transit, what was working, what's not working. The answer is there is not a heck of a lot working right now. And as you said, Diana, it's best just to stay where you are if that's at all possible. Let me go through some of these. There are scattered outages in all the subway lines. You cannot assume that a subway is running right now. In fact, assume that it's not. You can check any subway line you'd like, but there are scattered outages. And in fact, it may be more accurate to say some few subways are, in fact, working. Metro North and the Long Island Railroad have limited service out of Manhattan. New Jersey Transit and PATH have no service out of Manhattan at all right now. New Jersey Transit does have limited service out of Newark, Penn Station, to other points in New Jersey, and New Jersey Transit is operating in New Jersey normally. Buses are running in Manhattan north of Houston Street and are free. They have been made free by the governor and by the mayor. Buses are running in Manhattan north of Houston Street. All New Jersey Transit buses in and out of Manhattan, though, are suspended. Again, as we said, New Jersey Transit continues to operate in New Jersey normally. The bridges and tunnels, all the bridges are open going out of Manhattan, but they are closed coming in to Manhattan. One outbound tube has been opened to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, but all the other tunnels are closed in both directions. Let's talk about some roads. The Long Island Expressway westbound is closed at the Patchogue Holbrook Road. The westbound Northern State Parkway is closed at the Queens line. The westbound Southern State Parkway, is closed at the Meadowbrook Parkway. Southbound Major Deegan is closed at 230th Street. The southbound Henry Hudson Parkway is closed at the Henry Hudson Bridge. Again, no service coming in to Manhattan. The FDR is closed in both directions between the United Nations, all the way down at the United Nations, and the South Ferry Terminal. Eastbound 46th Street is closed at Eastbound 46, is closed at Jones Road in Englewood. Eastbound Route 46 is closed at 5th Street in Fort Lee. And eastbound Route 3 is closed at the New Jersey Turnpike. Northbound Routes 1 and 9 closed at the Pulaski Skyway. Route 7 is closed at the Whitpen Bridge. All of New York City schools, of course, will be open tomorrow. They are open now for people who have not been able to get out, but they will be open as scheduled tomorrow. And ferries leaving from Pier 11 at Wall Street, West 38th Street, and East 34th Street, and Pier A at Battery Park. Those are ferries leaving Manhattan. Nothing is coming in. That's all we have from here. Back to the studio.
Jim Dolan live in the newsroom. Thank you very much, Jim. Roz Abrams, Rob Hanrahan here with you. Eyewitness News at 5 is coming up next.
This is the news leader, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
I just heard a big blast. That was it.
I saw a silver flash and the flames, and I saw a pointy tail. That's how I knew it was a plane. We came from the 82nd floor, and I don't know where my peers are. I don't know. I hope to God they're okay.
I thought everything was fine, and then it collapsed. I really thought we were going to die here.
Tragic. Just got out minutes before with pancakes.
Oh, my God, there it goes!
An attack on America paralyzes New York City as hijacked planes target the World Trade Center towers. Good evening. You're watching Eyewitness News at 5. I'm Rob Hanrahan.
I'm Roz Abrams. It was an attack on America, plain and simple. It began just before 9 o'clock this morning when an airplane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Moments later, another plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. And now, just moments ago, in exclusive video, we see the full destruction of those attacks. As you can see, it is only now becoming clear just how devastating that attack was. There is no word on casualties, but we know there are many. Mayor Giuliani has already advised the city that the casualties will be more than most of us can bear. And New York City was not alone. A plane crashed into the Pentagon just outside of Washington, D.C. David Ushery is in the newsroom with details on the terrorist attacks. David.
Roz, an attack on America that at least part of which was witnessed by America. And as you can tell already, the video and the eyewitness testimony very compelling. And from coast to coast, it is affecting the nation as a whole. The events unfolded in what seemed like a methodical way this morning. And for a time, the nation wondered, what next? The first blow to the world superpower came just before 9 this morning, striking at the towering symbol of America's dominance on the world stage. The FBI says an American Airlines jet, Flight 11, out of Boston and headed to Los Angeles, slammed into the North Tower. Flames and smoke billowed from the skyscraper, but the emergency response was swift and evacuations were started to get many people out to safety. Within minutes, the area is flooded with cops and firefighters and EMTs trying to help civilians. And Newscopter 7 and other media outlets are perched as witnesses. They have been what the attackers were waiting for, because at 9:04, just minutes after the first strike, watch closely at the right of your screen as a second jetliner heads for what even to the untrained eye looks like a surgical strike into the South Tower. Against a backdrop of gentle blue skies, a terrorist arrow pierces the heart of a city and a nation. There were several angles to witness the tragedy, one more horrifying than the next. The FBI says this was a United Airlines flight 175 out of Boston, also headed to Los Angeles. At this point, the 3 major airports in New York City are already shut down. Trading on the financial markets was suspended, and several of the city's high-profile buildings evacuated. Then the escalating fear of terrorism spreads to Washington, where at 9:40, another jetliner, this an American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the mighty fortress of American defense, the Pentagon. Back in Lower Manhattan, there is mayhem after the second plane attack. Then at 10:09, the unspeakable happens, and those at a distance are paralyzed by what they see. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. A panic surges through the streets as thousands of people, including many of our reporters, start trying to outrun the storm of concrete and steel. Then at 10:30, the North Tower comes crashing down. The buildings in which 50,000 people work and thousands other visit were reduced to rubble. Just a few minutes later, in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, word of a plane down, a United Airlines flight that originated in Newark. Based on communications, officials believe it too was hijacked. The president's exact location was kept mum for much of the day, but at mid-afternoon, he tried to calm the nation.
I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks.
By the end of the day, Manhattan was effectively cut off by air, land, and sea. Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani also tried to assure the city that it was safe.
That the city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists, that our democracy, that our rule of law, that our strength and our willingness to defend ourselves will ultimately prevail.
And at this hour, New York City remaining on a full terrorism alert with all uniformed police officers and firefighters called to duty. We'll, of course, as we have throughout the day, continue to monitor developments here in the newsroom. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, David. As part of that security, authorities have shut down the city. And as you know, the Hudson River crossings have been closed throughout the day. The tunnels and bridges there. We just have word now that the Lincoln Tunnel has now opened one lane outbound only. It's one lane outbound at the Lincoln Tunnel reopened, and each vehicle, we're told, each one leaving the city is being checked by authorities using bomb-sniffing dogs. So that's the latest on transportation. Much more coming up in just a few moments. But first, we want to tell you more about what has happened throughout the day here. Eyewitness News has had several reporters in Lower Manhattan. They were there immediately following the attacks on the World Trade Center, and their own accounts of this attack are gripping, to say the least. We begin with NJ Burkett. He's live in Lower Manhattan for us. NJ.
And Rob, nothing but a gaping hole in the New York City skyline right now. For hours, huge plumes of smoke have been rising from what were once the World Trade Towers. And ambulances here on the West Side Highway have been crisscrossing the road here, racing past us all day. You know, we got to the disaster scene shortly after the attack, but the plane crashes were only the beginning. Minutes after the attack, it was pandemonium in Lower Manhattan.
Grab your guy and get him out.
As the fires raged on the upper floors, glass, twisted metal, and airplane parts hurtled to the ground below. We watched helplessly as office workers, desperate to escape the choking smoke, hung from their windows on the 90th floor. At the time,
no one expected the towers to collapse.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
Everyone ran for their lives into the lobby of an office building across the street. Firefighter Louis Caccioli of Engine 47 barely made it out alive.
As we came downstairs, we were just dragging people along with us. And then when we came outside, it just blew, the tower blew, and I found a mask on the floor as I was crawling. And I was lucky to make it out here.
I heard a plane, low, and I looked out the window.
Kathleen Ovino works in an office trailer just down the street.
And then I saw flames. I saw flames engulf the whole upper portion, and then I saw the smoke, and the whole trailer rocked. The trailer was almost lifted off the ground. And then I just started screaming because I could feel what was going on with the people. And I remember looking at the clock that it was 9 o'clock. And I said, here's people sitting at their desks with families. And then they weren't anymore. And then we saw the people jumping. We saw what we thought was debris, and we realized it was people jumping.
Go, go! Nearby hotels were evacuated as it became clear that the North Tower would collapse. And within minutes, there was another huge blast.
Oh my God, there it goes!
This time, we ran for a nearby parking garage to escape the approaching cloud of dust and debris. Seconds later, the World Trade Center was gone. Moyiwa Anibogi and Daphne Carlisle worked on the 82nd floor.
We saw a shadow, it looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
I thought we'd be able to unrun it, but we couldn't. It was pitch black.
Like many office workers, they survived the initial explosion, but were nearly killed by the collapse.
Yeah. Just a short time ago, they brought in a number of huge cranes. You can see now lining the West Side Highway. As soon as it is safe to go in and begin removing the debris, these cranes will be brought in to do that. Clearly, they will begin to look for bodies among the debris. Of course, that recovery effort will take days. A number of us from Eyewitness News were here in the moments after the attack on the World Trade Center. Let's turn over now to Jim Hoffer, who got here shortly after the attack. Jim?
Well, NJ, thank you. You know, one of the things that strikes me here in the passing hours is just how little panic has taken place, what little panic, at least, that we've seen, considering the enormity of events here, the colossal damage that has taken place. I think you can say, at least in the early going, that New Yorkers have braved this beyond what can be expected. Photographer John Chow and I were around 10:15 this morning heading toward the last remaining tower when it suddenly crumbled right before us, changing forever the city skyline and the city's people. Just when you thought it could not get worse, it did. The second trade tower, crippled by a kamikaze plane strike, collapsed and sent hundreds of people running from its dangerous cloud of dust and debris. As you can see behind me, the second and last tower of the World Trade Tower has just collapsed. It is about 10:30 Eastern Time, and the tower has collapsed. We did not hear an explosion. There was no sign telling us previous any kind of warning that the building was going to collapse. The warning for us were people just running in our direction, and that's when we started to get out of the way. It is a scene out of Dante's hell, horrific. No World Trade Tower is standing. Time, 10:30, Lower Manhattan.
And I'm standing next to John, and then the top of the thing blew up, and it just exploded, started coming down. I was running for my life, and me, the fireman, John, we were just taking off, man, and just pulling down behind us. It was coming up behind us, and I just saw this truck, and I knew it was right behind me, and I just slid underneath it, and I thought it was John behind me, and it was a fireman, and we stayed down there, and everything just went black.
Well, that New Jersey man is one of what must be innumerable heroes in this tragedy. He was able to get a woman, he and his friend, able to get a woman out of one of the towers. She was in a wheelchair. They were able to bring her down some 50 floors before that building collapsed. Although in an interview with us, as he was choking back tears, he says he didn't know whether the woman in the wheelchair was able to get far enough away from the building to prevent any harm to her when the building did finally collapse. We're live in Lower Manhattan. Jim Hoffer, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Jim, our Joe Torres was a couple of blocks from the South Tower of the World Trade Center when it began to collapse. We actually lost touch with Joe and his photographer for some time this morning. Both are fine this evening, and Joe joins us now live with an account of what was happening all around him. Joe.
I can tell you tonight that it is a very different thing to become part of a story than it is simply to report a story. A range of emotions tonight for myself and Eyewitness News photographer Glenn Mayrose. We find ourselves at this hour very thankful, very blessed to be standing here talking to you today, and in a moment you'll see why. At the same time, we mourn, we grieve with the thousands of people today who lost a loved one or who at this hour still do not know what has happened to their friends or relatives. Let us now show you what we experienced this morning about 1 hour after the first plane crashed into the World Trade Center. Let's go! Underground! I'm with you! Go! 10 o'clock this morning, photographer Glenn Mayrose and I, along with FBI agents, police officers, fire officials, we all thought for sure a bomb was set to explode underneath our feet outside 7 World Trade Center. We took off running for our lives north on Church Street. We had no idea the top of one of the Twin Towers had just exploded. We ran 5, 6 blocks, Glenn lugging his camera equipment, videotapes, and batteries as a cloud of smoke, dust, and debris crept up behind us. People running, crying, and screaming, wiping tears from their eyes. Out of breath and unsure of what just happened and what we just experienced, we finally stopped, took a breath to make sure we and others were okay. We finally paused and talked to this gentleman, covered entirely in dust and debris. As others looked back in shock and horror, we started another interview with a Port Authority engineer who worked at World Trade Center and spoke to us about the strength and integrity of the skyscrapers. Then, suddenly, the second tower erupted right before our eyes. Oh, no. Moments later, the frantic run up Church Street started all over again. And again, Glenn and I were within the shadows of the World Trade Center, just 1 or 2 blocks away on the north side of the towers. We have been out on the street trying to cover the story here of the people throughout the day. We are still unsure of many of the facts that have occurred because we haven't been in front of a TV or in front of a radio. To that end, one of the facts we're not sure of, we're not sure in exactly what direction most of the debris fell, other than to say it did not fall in our direction on the north side. And for that, we're quite thankful. Live outside St. Vincent's, outside the Trauma Center in Greenwich Village, I'm Joe Torres, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Joe. An amazing account, Joe and Glenn Mayrose. Well, as you've seen, this horrific attack was shocking for many people. It no doubt will remain so throughout our lifetimes. But for the people who actually saw what happened, as you saw Joe's account, others who were down there, this will be an indelible print on their minds forever. Let's go to Jeff Rossney. He's live now with more on their stories. Jeff.
The IFB is useless, right?
Yeah, don't bother with the IFB.
A few technical problems obviously come into play here as we continue our live coverage of what happened today at the World Trade Center. Jeff Rossney has been down in that section throughout the day. Do we have Jeff? All right, we would like to go right to Jeff's tape. He filed this report just a few minutes ago. It came into the newsroom. His interviews with witnesses who were there at the time of the Trade Center bombing. Let's take a look. This is Jeff Rossney.
Stuck
in a dark black cloud as the World Trade Center went down. Workers trying to get away could not. Hard to breathe, impossible to see.
All of a sudden I heard rumbling and we all started running away from it. The glass like blew out and threw me onto the sidewalk, and I couldn't see for like 20 seconds.
Just blocks away, a plane engine sits on the sidewalk, burned. The dust covered everything, making evacuations and firefighting tough.
It was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, they were coming out on the mezzanine level there, and another explosion came right from it, just everyone flying.
See people bleeding, and what did you see?
Oh, everybody could see. Do you want blood? Here's blood. Everybody's bleeding. People are laying all over the floor. It's horrible. And I was there the first time, and this is twice.
In the moments after impact, a frantic Mayor Giuliani rushed away for safety, telling us to follow him.
Can't go to sleep. Why? You should not go to sleep. All right, well then let's go north then.
You know especially what happened to airplanes?
Come with us. Come with us.
Firefighters moving through the rubble, trying to find survivors, finding them by following their screams for help.
I've been on the fire department 20 years and never lived through this. I lived through 2 collapses today. I'm on vacation from the fire department. I came in on my own. My car's all wrecked. And I just came in to help people and do my job. That's my job, save people's lives.
And they saved so many people today. Want to give you a live picture down Church Street. One firefighter called it World War III, and you can see why. The fire still burns out of control. And next door in the financial center, we understand from the fire department they have evacuated everyone out of that building. But again, the rescue effort continues, and there is certainly no end in sight. You hear me coughing there for a minute. The dust gets to you. It gets into your lungs. We've been wearing these masks all day to protect us, but certainly it does get to you. We have been out here, again, for 8 hours. Back to you.
All right, Jeff Rossen, thank you live. They should probably keep those masks on as long as possible to take care of their own health. Now, as you saw, the witness accounts of the attacks today are quite compelling. People are stunned, they're shocked, some barely even able to talk about it.
Stacey Sager is on the west side with more from those who have witnessed New York City change forever. Stacey.
Well, Roz, I can relate to what Jeff is saying. We were able to drive around Lower Manhattan today and walk around on the streets, at times needing these masks. I can tell you it is truly eerie to see no traffic whatsoever on many of the streets of Lower Manhattan. Certainly not a typical weekday in terms of traffic. You're just walking around. The streets are empty, but for large groups of people staring at that plume of smoke. Everyone with the same concern, everyone wondering if the wind would change, where the smoke would blow next. And when you see the people who have been at ground zero, you know there are few words that can describe the true horror of this day. When the West Side Highway looks like a war zone and cars and people are covered with soot and ash, one of the only things we could do is give victims a chance to reach their loved ones. Frank Veriano made it down from the 88th floor.
Okay, Madeline, Gina, everyone, I'm okay. I called. I tried to call. Whatever. I got to find my people.
And there were those who came here distraught on foot and in search of their loved ones.
I'm looking for my stepmother.
You're looking for your stepmother? Where was your stepmother at the time of the blast?
Supposed to be at work on the 21st floor.
Doesn't look good at all.
What floor was your sister on?
107.
And how long has it been? You've been just waiting to try to hear anything?
Well, I live uptown. I just came down here as soon as I could, but they don't know anything. They can't tell us anything.
Every few feet, more eyewitness accounts. These people walk down from the 89th floor, knowing full well many above them may not have made it.
Have you ever seen bodies piled up on top of each other, frozen, contorted, covered in soot, all piled on top of each other? You'll never forget something like that as long as you live.
And firefighters, heroic New York firefighters, risking everything to help the survivors. And then they begin to think about who could have done this and why.
They're animals. They're animals. It should be an act of war. It should be war. Nobody's safe. We're not safe. Even all these little buildings, we're not safe.
Back here live again on West Street, you see the plume of smoke. You can see it's still smoldering over behind me. You hear the anger in their voices. You hear the shock in their voices. We talked to people who came out from all of this and had no idea that this was a terrorist attack. Really, we talked to them, we informed them, they're still in shock. That is what we found out here in Lower Manhattan today. I'm Stacey Sager. Back to you.
Thank you, Stacey. Hundreds of people, the victims of this attack, were rushed to area hospitals. And now the need for blood is dire. Hours after the attack, dozens of people began lining up to donate blood, but the need is still extremely great. Now, we are going to give you information on where you can go to help in just a moment. But first, Lauren Glassberg has been at St. Vincent's Hospital all day, and she joins us now with the latest on the casualties. Lauren.
When I arrived at the World Trade Center shortly after 9 this morning, shortly after that second plane struck the second tower, there was the overwhelming sense that there would be hundreds of fatalities. At this point, no word on how many people have died in this terrible tragedy, but we can tell you that so far there are about 700 people hospitalized throughout New York City hospitals. And here at St. Vincent, this is considered a level 1 trauma center. It is the closest trauma center to the World Trade Center, or what was the World Trade Center. So this is where hundreds of the most critically injured, or those with the most severe injuries, have been taken. Here are the numbers as they stand at this point. 297 people have been treated here or are currently here. 3 people have died while they were either in surgery, emergency, or in the operating room. 45 people are in critical condition, and of the 297 patients, 42 are firefighters, police officers, or emergency personnel. Fortunately, we are told most of their injuries are relatively minor, but one of the people who did die at St. Vincent's is a firefighter. As for the other injuries, we're hearing mostly broken bones, lacerations, a lot of eye injuries. And through it all, doctors, nurses, emergency personnel have been ready, anticipating the worst and preparing for what may still come. The mayor commending all who have helped out.
I want to express my appreciation to St. Vincent's Hospital for the people of the city, for all of the work that they've done today and that they're continuing to do to save lives and assist us in this one of the worst days in the history of our country and the history of the city. It was a source of great comfort when I was rushing past here at about 9 o'clock this morning to head down to the Trade Center after the first airplane had hit and before the second, that there were doctors and nurses already out on the street ready to receive what we knew would be wounded and injured people.
EMS has informed us that over the next several hours and perhaps for the next several days, we will continue to receive patients quite regularly. They know that, as the mayor said, there are numbers of people who are still alive under the debris. There are firefighters, police officers, EMS workers, and others.
Quick throwback, breaking news, there is another explosion.
We'll have more from the hospital here at St. Vincent's, but we have some breaking news. So back to you in the studio.
Lauren, we have reports of another explosion. Jeff Rosson is nearby, and he's going to update us. Jeff. We're being switched, so don't go anywhere. Jeff? Our communications have been damaged as a result of today's incidents as well. Is Jeff there? All right.
We're here.
Hang on,
Roz,
Jeff Rosson. Yes, Jeff, take it away.
We're being moved away by police, but I want to give you a quick live picture. There has been some kind of other building collapse. I'm told that it's not necessarily an explosion, but it's some kind of collapse, and we have a dust cloud coming right at us, as you can look over here. Police are trying to move everyone out of the area. These trucks are blocking our view, but we heard another loud bang, and then all of a sudden, through the corridor of buildings here in Lower Manhattan, another dust cloud similar to the one we saw this morning, and you can see it's now billowing right nearly above us. It's about 1 block away. Police started running down the streets away from the scene, where they have been continuing their rescue efforts to move everyone out of here. We only have a couple seconds left to talk to you. Here, they're moving us out right now. We're moving, and we better go, so we're safe, and we'll get you more.
Jeff.
Back to you guys.
All right, thank you. Jeff Rosson, obviously heeding what the authorities are telling him at fire, Roz, at 7 World Trade. It's been burning for over an hour now this afternoon, and earlier Cheryl Fiandaca had told us that they did expect that building possibly to come down. I want to assure you that a firefighter did tell us in the last hour before we came on the air at 5 o'clock that 7 World Trade had been successfully evacuated. The people were all out of it. Let's hope that is what Jeff Rosson was looking at, as that dust cloud made its way down the street.
It was heavily damaged, and apparently it just came down.
Seems so.
Yes. Okay, Rob.
Well, several of the people injured in the attack were also transported to Bellevue Hospital. That is on the east side. And excuse me, if you could tell me from upstairs, you wanted me to go to Marcus Solis, who was standing by for us. Marcus, what do you have? You're at Bellevue now, aren't you?
That's right, Rob, and some police personnel still coming. Ambulances just coming up First Avenue. Just a short while ago, we saw a tractor trailer. We understand the first of the bodies being taken to the morgue here at Bellevue. Now, under normal circumstances, the majority of the injured would be brought here to the premier trauma center in the city. However, this has certainly been an extraordinary day, and so the injured were taken to several smaller, closer hospitals. A triage station has even been set up at Chelsea Piers. Some people ferried to Jersey City. Still, more than 140 people brought here. There have been 2